Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this relatively early, early to be dark outside evening. Welcome to Celebrating Neighbors United for Nature, a look back at the 2021 season of Project Swallowtail. And for all of you who were active participants this year, you know that it was quite a year of adaptation and needing to pivot, but ultimately a year of a great amount of hope and community building. And today, Kathleen Law, the incredible coordinator and really brains behind the operations for Project Swallowtail, will be guiding us through all of our achievements of this past year. So I'm going to invite Kathleen to come on the screen, or just transition us to the next slide. And as always, we'd like to start our sessions with a bit of a grounding moment, a moment to acknowledge what it is that we are trying to do here, and to acknowledge that at best, we're trying to come into a better relationship with the land to which we owe everything that you and I currently have. And with that acknowledgement must come the recognition that this land has been stewarded by many nations, Indigenous peoples, First Nations, who have walked and been in relationship with this land for thousands of years prior to colonizers and settlers arriving here. And seeing this space as something devoid of human connection because of its incredible amount of biodiversity. How could it be that humans could exist in a place and also have thriving life around them? But it is precisely due to the stewardship of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron, the Wendat, and many other nations that traveled and traded on this land that we have the biodiversity that we still do today. So with that acknowledgement, I would like to ground us in an introduction of ourselves. As I said, it's been a while since we've seen everybody, but my name is Junaid Shehzad Khan. I work with Pollinator Partnership Canada as the Pollinator Stewardship Coordinator. I've actually just recently taken on this position, so I'm super excited. And I'm joined today by Kathleen Law.
That's my cue to unmute. Thank you, Junaid. And miigwech and merci for a very a real land acknowledgement. So thank you for that again. So tonight we get to kind of revel in our accomplishments of the last year, or of the last season. So what I want to do tonight is kind of recap, some highlights. I also want to share with you what we've learned through the project evaluation, which is not only the survey that many of you filled out, but also interviews, focus groups, and sort of our experiential lessons learned. And also want to share a sneak peek of what's coming up in 2022. And I'd like to start by thanking and recognizing our funders, the Patrick and Barbara Keenan Foundation and the Ontario Trillium Foundation, without whose support Project Swallowtail would definitely not be possible in the form that it has taken. So I want to acknowledge this crucial support and also celebrate what's been possible because of it. So thank you. So let's start at the very beginning. What is Project Swallowtail? Well, it's a lot of different things. It's a network of habitat stewards, of us and of you, stewarding our little gardens, our parks, our lost lands, our boulevards, our forgotten urban spaces. We're also very much a community of neighbors who've become friends, and friends who become advocates and colleagues and co-conspirators in a crazy project of rewilding the city. We're also an experiment in urban ecology, and can talk a bit more about that, go into some details. We're also very much a place-based source of advocacy and action, and I dare say an innovative model, something I'll speak to a bit later as well. At a glance, there are different components to this network, to this community. So we have a steering committee on which 12 members sit, including Junaid and myself. We also have block ambassadors. So this is part of our innovative model. Our block ambassadors are our super keen, enthusiastic volunteers to whom we give some dedicated support and training. There are 97 of you. That's a huge number. That's incredible. In terms of individual participants, I think we're nearing 600, which is a great number. We've got 72 community groups of various kinds, small and large. We have 26 schools, and we have 72 Pollinatio grantees. And we've doubled in size since April. So we went from 400 to over 800 participants total. So thank you to all the veterans who've been with us since last year, since the beginning. And thank you and welcome to everyone who's joined us this past season and filled out our ranks and grown this community. So I'll start by saying a bit about Pollinator Partnership Canada, in part to clear up confusion. So this has come up in the feedback and in the evaluation. Questions like, what's the difference between Project Swallowtail and Pollinator Partnership Canada, In the Zone, David Suzuki Foundation, all of these organizations that are involved. Well, Pollinator Partnership Canada is the environmental charity that Junaid and I both work for. And we are the organization that has applied and received funding for Project Swallowtail. And so we end up doing the newsletters and the logistics and the organizing and the invoices and the meetings and all of that kind of stuff. And so we do it with the support from our colleagues. And we do it in large part because our focus as Pollinator Partnership, of course, is on pollinators. That's our expertise, but also because we're really lucky to be a small organization. So we're nimble, we can adapt, we're pretty flexible. And many of us live in Toronto and in West Toronto, which makes it very, very practical. But crucial to our work is the steering committee. So I said there are 12 members, including Junaid and myself. And here are the other lovely, friendly, warm faces whose expertise and very generous contributions of time and expertise are at the heart of Project Swallowtail. And so each of these lovely people has contributed in their own unique way to making Project Swallowtail what it is. And so many of them are involved in their own capacity as individuals, as super ambassadors, so to speak. Others are involved on behalf and with the support of their organizations, whether it be Ryan with WWF Canada or Jode Roberts from David Suzuki Foundation. So a big shout out to all our steering committee members for all the incredible work they do. Many of them have volunteered hundreds of hours to make this project thrive. But then, of course, what is Project Swallowtail if it's not for you? So our block ambassadors, our participants, our community groups, our schools. And so this is a map. We can't even see all the pins, especially in the original project area in West Toronto. And so this is really just to give us a glimpse of who you are and where you are and how closely connected you are geographically, which is really a key point. So let's have a brief look back on this season, and I'm going to apologize in advance that I really cannot cover everything. And I'm going to do it very high level without going into all the fun and juicy details because I want to share the feedback that you gave us through the project evaluation. So some of our key moments, and these are the more formal events. Seed sitters, 40 of you grew 2,200 plants from seed starting last winter. This was a really fun activity. It was our first time doing it. It was experimental on our part. We learned a lot of lessons along with you, lessons that we're going to take into the next iteration. I'll give you a sneak peek of that later. So these 2,200 plants, I have to say, many of them were from Pete Ewens, who is our expert native seed germinator and who really helped bring together the seed sitters through our periodic calls and through sharing his advice and his expertise. And these 2,200 plants we were so tenderly cared for by seed sitters were then given as gifts to neighbors, to friends, to community groups all over the city. And so this, I think, is such a beautiful example of the spirit of experiment, of learning, of sharing, and of giving that we really want to infuse our project, our community with. We also had a plant sale, which we know from your feedback was a highlight. And so with our funding from Trillium Foundation and from Keenan Foundation, we were able to buy plants and then sell them back at a highly subsidized price. So you were paying less for the plants than they were bought for. And that gave us the chance to bring in close to 6,000 plants from a few different nurseries outside of the GTA right into the city at 2 different pickup locations on 2 different dates, making these hopefully more accessible to more people and to more community groups. So I think that went a long way in terms of achieving some of our ecological goals. Other things that we did was work with the City of Toronto on clarifying boulevard garden criteria. And so those are the bylaws and regulations around the height of plants in boulevards, so those spaces between sidewalks and roads, for example. That was really important because we know that those spaces have the potential to be habitat. And we want to work with the city to make sure that when that habitat is created, that it's not accidentally mowed down, and that important things like sightlines for traffic safety are respected. So we were able to work with the city on clarifying those criteria, and that allowed many of our project participants to start their own boulevard gardens, including quite a few of them with Pete Ewan's help. We also provided input to the city on the Natural Garden Exemption Bylaw. And this was very much an initiative of Lorraine Johnson, who's been involved for many, many years on sort of the sometimes dry, sometimes technical aspects of city policy, which allow or don't allow habitat to take place. And so Lorraine very intelligently analyzed and recommended changes to some of the city's policies as the city was undergoing a sort of a reconsideration of its current bylaws. And with the support of Block ambassadors who signed on to Lorraine Johnson's letter, we were able to advocate for improvements to the natural garden exemption bylaw. So update on that is it's not quite where we want it to be yet. But as a group, I feel that we have a connection to the right people in the city, and that with your growing numbers and knowledge, that we're going to keep moving the needle in the right direction. Another huge highlight of this past season was the Pollinator Steward certification. So this was an opportunity that we extended to our Block ambassadors as well as to Pollinate TO grant recipients. And this was a 6-week online course with 10 guest speakers, experts in their field on how to make, create, steward pollinator habitat, how to enrich, engage, how to integrate Indigenous perspectives and reconciliation to these projects. And 135 Blog ambassadors and Pollinate TO grant recipients took that course, took that certification training. And I think it was just so successful and such a highlight for me personally, and I know for many of you as well. And sneak peek, we'll be offering it again this coming year, and not only to Block ambassadors, but to all of our participants. So we're very excited for that. finally, we were able to have some in-person events. It didn't happen until August, after a couple of years getting off the ground in the middle of a pandemic and being cautious about what we could and could not do. We finally had the opportunity to meet each other in person in a more formal way. And we did this through some organized garden tours, including some of them on bicycles, led in large part by Junaid, and hosted one garden to the next by our block ambassadors and by our participants and by our steering committee members. So we got a chance to visit many gardens and also different kinds of gardens representing different kinds of spaces. So we have here the garden that Pete created at the Fairview Nursing Home, I believe it's called. Our block ambassador, Douglas Counter, also gave tours, many tours of his 30-year-old native plant garden in Etobicoke. We also saw a new tiny garden, postage stamp size garden by block ambassador Sarah Plaud that was only in its second year of growth and completely phenomenal. And we also saw Lorraine Johnson's Portland Place Pollinator garden and Angel Beatty's Parkdale People and Pollinators Peace Garden in honor of Black Lives Matter. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful, but we got to see lots of different kinds of gardens. We also hosted several different webinars on everything from starting plants from seed, an introduction to the plants that were going to be on sale and how to plant them, and also some webinars in collaboration with some of our steering committee member organizations. We produced a few resources, including the 2021 edition of Plant Guide. We just published through the city Goldenrod brochure, which is the result of Ryan Godfrey's expert botanic knowledge and Lorraine Johnson's excellent writing and editing. We also have some garden signs and handbills that we produced this past year. And then, of course, so this is an overview of some of our more formal official events that we were very actively involved in organizing. And then there are all the events that you block ambassadors and participants initiated yourselves. And so I won't be able to give you a huge survey of this. That will actually happen at our next webinar next week on Thursday, November 18th. And we'll have a few block ambassadors give you a taste of the different kinds of things that have happened. But I do want to share with you a short video just to give you a taste. So Junaid, if you could please queue up our friends and block ambassador, Diane Goodwillie and Kit Rocha. This might take a few seconds as Junaid clicks through many different things.
Can my screen be seen?
It can.
Great. Just let me know if you can hear the audio.
Kit Rocha.
And I'm Diane Goodwillie. And we both did the certificate course for Project Swallowtail, and we're both block ambassadors. And so we're going to be talking about the farmers market, because that was a way for us to be able to engage with the public and also promote pollinator plants, as well as give away plants and engage with people, as we're supposed to be doing with Project Swallowtail.
Exactly. So we made a quick attempt to get connected with a farmers market that is up in Etobicoke, but it's city run, and due to COVID restrictions, we couldn't. So we swung around and went down to this little local market that's very, very close to me. And they were very welcoming. They allowed us to have a place and a booth, no charge, and provided an awning when we required it. So we launched.
So I was able to get rid of my 180 black-eyed Susan plants that I really needed to liberate my balcony. I'd been given them by Pete. And
yes, we wanted to also acknowledge our other helpful contributors, Douglas Counter, amazing knowledge and background, Pete Ewens as well. There's no words to describe his knowledge. Ali was a supplier, Gabrielle was a supplier of plants and seedlings, and of course, Kathy's Kombucha, a special friend of mine at the market who gave us free kombucha every time we showed
Real
up.
incentive, you know, come on,
Very
you
much.
guys, you can all do a farmer's market too.
Exactly.
So here we are the first day, and Pete's there, and he really was a role model for us, because when people asked about balcony gardens, we didn't know how to answer, but he had a quick and ready answer. And Siobhan on the left there, she actually wrote up a whole little handout for balcony gardens. And then we said, well, we've got more plants, we've got to get more plants. And Brigitte on the right said, well, I can have a potting up party at my place. So she gathered some people, and so we had a potting up party, and we did about 500 or 600 plants then, ready for more markets.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the things we learned, which was really interesting, was the high amount of engagement. About 20 to 25 people signed up every time we were at the market. They love the plants. We had about 23, almost 25% had balconies, and that was a high engagement only because they wanted to grow plants for pollinators on their balconies, and we finally had some information to give away.
And we also said, you know, you don't need to just grow plants. You can actually be a seed sitter. You know, you can just you don't have to have the bees and butterflies coming. So here I am at the market, and you can see behind the different stalls and the tents. And it was a pretty simple situation.
Yeah,
and
very quick setup. One of the things that we added to our Google Drive as well was a large printout that they could photograph or take with them, a laminated page about the plants we gave away, and a small little tiny card for care of the plants.
And the other thing that was really helpful was Lorraine Johnson's book, and also the Grow Me Instead brochures, which we said people could download if they wanted. So
exactly.
And then we decided, well, we needed to have some kind of logo and identity, so we actually developed our own T-shirts with the
Project Swallowtail logo.
Yeah,
and we launched, and that was it.
and there we are.
We
So
had a ton of fun, and we're doing it again
we're gonna
next
do it
year
again
as
next
well.
year, and we'd love to have other people come and help us or do their own farmers market.
Absolutely. We need you to join us.
Bye.
Thanks.
I have to say, the first time I have seen that video all the way through, and my goodness, Kit Rocha and Diane Goodwillie. So
Agreed.
cool, so great.
So this is just like one small glimpse into Two Blocks Ambassadors initiative. And I just want to just reiterate how this was Kit and Diane's idea. And we were able, in some cases, to supply some resources through the project, and in others, find out what kind of resources we'll be able to provide next year to help them with this initiative, and hopefully help other block ambassadors with similar or completely different initiatives. So a big thank you to Kit and Diane for sharing that experience. And if you want to find out more about the different kinds of great ideas that block ambassadors have put into practice, then do join us next week. So one of the last things I want to mention in terms of highlights was the project evaluation. And this is going to be a big portion of tonight's presentation, because this is what gave us an opportunity to take a moment to take stock about how we were doing things, what you enjoyed about it, what you would like to see done differently, what we can improve. And so let me just dive right in. So we had a few overarching questions, and importantly, what's our ecological impact here? We want to rewild the city, we want to create habitat. Are we actually achieving that goal? What about our social and community impact? Because this is not only about pollinators, this is also very much about people and our relationships to each other and to our environment. And one of the big questions for us is, does this block ambassador and community model work? And then, of course, importantly, is how can we improve on this first year? So we used a mix of methods, including quantitative, so counting, putting pins on maps. And I saw there was a question from Carol, what did the pins on maps represent? That represented the locations of our different participants, block ambassadors, and community groups. So that's where everyone is located. We also used qualitative data, which was mostly through survey, our interviews with a few of you individually, a block ambassador focus group, and a steering committee focus group. And I'll just mention to all the block ambassadors who are tuned in. Actually, I'll tell you later. Okay, so ecological impact. Our goals are very much to increase and to connect habitat. That's a key part. We also want to increase native plant abundance and diversity, especially for swallowtail host plants. We want to increase swallowtail butterfly and other pollinators abundance. So increasing and connecting habitat. Here again is that map. So each of these pins represents an active Project Swallowtail participant who presumably has created or enhanced pollinator habitat at the location that we're seeing on this map. So I think it's safe to say that we have probably increased or enhanced habitat through the project. And importantly, I think we have gone some ways in increasing the connectivity. So if we're looking at High Park, which is the big green space on the left of the screen, and then another smaller green space, Sororan map, which is more or less in the middle, and what's actually a green space, but looks like gray lines. So it's the West Toronto rail path, which are those tracks running from the top center of the screen down to the bottom right. Those are all habitats. And looking at all the pins on the map, we can say that each of those small habitat portions helps link up those more significant, larger green spaces, which is one of our goals, is to connect habitat. Another goal is to increase plant abundance and diversity. So I think we have done that because we have brought in lots of thousands of plants through the plant sale, which some of those were also gifted to our community groups. Our seed sitters also produced a phenomenal amount of plants, and I haven't been able to count all of them. And this is a question for future project improvement, but I know that many of you have given and traded plants out of your own garden, your garden divisions, and from sources of plants outside of Project Swallowtail. So I think we can comfortably say over 8,000 plants are new to the Toronto urban landscape because of you and because of Project Swallowtail, and that includes well over 40 species. Have we increased pollinator abundance? That one is harder to answer. It's likely, but it's not something that's easily measured, in part because you need baseline data. So we need to know what was there before to compare it to what is now. And there are some data sets out there waiting for some grad students to come and help us answer those questions. And we do have one actually, Anthony Ayers, who's a master's student at York University, who has recruited some of your backyards for his research. And so we're looking forward to a presentation from him this coming spring where he'll share with us some of what he's learned about whether we have increased pollinator abundance. We're also going to look to participant data from iNaturalist and other methods and perhaps other projects for being able to answer this very quantitative and scientific question. And again, as I mentioned, something that grad students could definitely help us with. What about our social and community impact? Well, our goals here were to not only effectively, but also meaningfully engage participants. We wanted to see an increased sense of connection to nature and to community. We also wanted to help increase knowledge of ecology of our urban environment. And we wanted to increase a sense of empowerment so that we feel we can take action and that we can take well-informed, educated action. So some of the questions we had were, how much has Project Swallowtail contributed to you feeling you know more about native plants and pollinators? And we had a resounding 99% say that yes. And of that 59%, that was very much so. And I'm just going to pull out a few quotes. So I really like this one. I enjoyed learning more about pollinators and native plants. I've been gardening for many years. I now observe and think about these from an entirely different perspective. So I thought that was really meaningful and also representative of many other comments that we received pertaining to what people have learned and absorbed through Project Swallowtail. What about feeling more connected to your neighborhood? Again, some pretty good numbers here. Generally, people have felt more connected to their neighborhood through Project Swallowtail activities and the space that's been created. And a quarter of you feel that that is very much so. And again, this is a quote from one of you that's representative of many of the comments we received, which is, it was really great to learn that there are all these informed and connected people working on improving habitat in my neighborhood. So that came up a lot, is that perhaps sometimes it's easy to feel a bit alone, especially when we're confronted with the challenges of climate change and loss of biodiversity. But through Project Swallowtail, we get to meet other like-minded people and connect. And I think there's a synergy through those connections that is very much a situation where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. What about feeling more connected to nature where you live? Again, I think Project Swallowtail for me has definitely helped me with that, and many of you as well. And I especially like this comment, which is that Project Swallowtail is doing important educational as well as community work, showing us how we can connect with nature within a city. Nature is not just something out there, but here on the streets where we live, on our balconies, and bringing your awareness not just to plants, but necessary insects. And I think that's really beautiful because it speaks to this sort of maybe cultural disconnect we can have, where we think of ourselves in our built environment as separate from nature. And we really want to reintegrate and speaking to the sense of relationality to the land and to ourselves and to all the beings, that life and nature is here where we are, and that we can actively connect with it and foster that sense of love, if I dare say. How much has Project Swallowtail contributed to you feeling more empowered to take actions? This is where the rubber meets the road. So again, I'm very happy to see that many of you have felt that through your participation, your membership in this community, that you do feel more empowered to take action. And again, this is representative of some of the feedback. We think that the most enjoyable thing has been the sense of community, the feeling that there are more people out there who are willing to take action, who are not alone. I think this kind of grassroots mobilization has been something I haven't encountered in a gardening and environmental group. So thank you for everyone who has responded to that spark on the inside that makes you want to take action. And we're very happy to walk that path with you. One of the huge questions for me was like, what's the quality of this engagement, of these relationships in this project that we've created? Is it effective? Like, does this work? This idea of block ambassadors and groups on streets and steering committee members, like, does it actually work together to have some kind of effect? What are those effects? But is it also meaningful? You know, it's not only about being productive, it's also about sort of developing a certain quality of being together. And so we really wanted to know what that was like for you. And so I'm just going to share way too many quotes here because there were so many good ones to share from. People are feeling like they've become part of a community. Yes, that's what we want. Being connected to other groups doing similar work makes my own modest garden feel connected to a more significant effort. Absolutely. All of these small pieces are part of a much larger whole. And I suspect these modest gardens may be not that modest after all. I have more knowledge and now know that people care about the future. Isn't that great? Like, all of a sudden, meeting other people and connecting with other people that that care and that are actively working towards a sustainable and beautiful future. Feel that my work growing plants that promote bees and butterflies is important to my neighborhood. That's so great to hear. And one of the things that came up in quite a few comments is the opportunities that arose to speak and connect with neighbors, people we might have been living near to for years, And all of a sudden having this opportunity to get into a conversation, open up that relationship. And I deeply appreciate the inclusion of land acknowledgements, the framework of native plant gardening as an act of reconciliation and decolonization. Angel's talk about creating the Black Lives Matter Peace Garden was perhaps the most moving, inspiring, and thought-provoking part of the stewardship training. There are many layers of meaning, of diversity, and of growth that can be had through this community. And I think this comment speaks to some of the very important elements of it. So what about the community model and resources programming? So we did find out that Block ambassadors are amazing, and we didn't need the survey to learn about that, but it did confirm it. Yes, Block ambassadors are such a, having those boots on the ground, having people that are unique, that have their own ideas and that can connect with others and inspire each other is just such an effective and powerful way of growing this community and growing habitat. It really is wonderful. And the idea here is that we can train the trainers, because not every environmental organization, every staff member and steering committee member can be out there speaking to every participant. But having someone in the neighborhood that knows the neighborhood, that knows the neighbors, knows the streets and the parks is just so key. And so what we've learned is that this is really so effective. And we've also learned through these lessons learned what we can do to improve the Block ambassadors' experience, better connect our participants to Block ambassadors near them, and create more resources to really support everyone in their endeavors. So that is definitely something that's coming in the next year. We also found that one of the strengths about this community is that they're both formal and informal spaces and events and connections. And I think that really is a strength of it, is that this community exists in many different spaces and they overlap and they feed each other. So there are things like this official webinar, there are the newsletters we sent out, but there's also the Facebook group, there are people posting on Instagram, there are people having a conversation at the cafe or running into each other at the park, or starting up a conversation while someone is gardening. All of these are part of Project Swallowtail, of the community we've created, and they all support each other. And so I want to acknowledge the value and the existence of the formal and informal aspects of this project. Oop, wrong way. Oh yeah. So here's a comment that speaks to that. And I like the end in particular. The sense of a community of people really devoted to native plants and biodiversity in Toronto emerges from this mix of different kinds of ways of engaging and participating. So what about activities? Okay, well, here you gave us some great feedback. Pollinator Steward certification was a hit. And so, as I mentioned, we're really happy that we'll be able to offer it again in 2022, and not only to Block ambassadors, but to all participants. We're really looking forward to the next iteration. Seed Sitters was also a really popular or fun activity. We got lots of great feedback from the 40 of you who participated. Also learned quite a few things about how to improve it. So for those of you who were there last year, please join us again. If you're curious, keep an eye out for the upcoming newsletters. We'll have some details about how and what and when and who and on all of that. Plant sale, also a great success. We got lots of feedback from all of you about how much you enjoyed it, how helpful it was. And so we're definitely going to have another one of these in the late spring, early summer. And then the one thing that we didn't have much of, and this was largely due to COVID, was in-person activities. But I know so many of you have said how hungry you are for them. And we really, fingers crossed, look forward to having many more of those in the coming year. including some bee safaris, some garden plantings, some weeding, all kinds of fun things that we can do together. Maybe even a picnic. Oh, probably especially a picnic. And this comment pertains to the Pollinator Steward certification, and I have to agree. We had some amazing speakers, and so this training was just so inspiring. And myself, as a host, was very, very engaged by everyone that spoke and learned a tremendous amount. So we're really excited to offer it again this coming year. Oh, there we go. So what should we do differently? How can we improve? And I want to say, first of all, thank you for taking the time to give us your feedback on it. This is really so valuable, because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't see what you don't see, right? And so your feedback really gave us a chance to take a step back, take a breath, and learn more about how you've experienced this community and initiative and how we can improve it. We got many very specific recommendations. What plant species to include or not include in the kits, particular kinds of events, all kinds of things. And so we'll be looking through all of those again in detail and looking to incorporate as many of those as we can. There were also many overarching themes, and I'll get to those here. So one of the things that came up quite a lot was having more neighborhood connections, especially by connecting newer members with local block ambassadors. So this I was just talking about. I also have to say this has been a bit of a perennial challenge for us, just having to do with data and privacy. But this is one of our projects. This is very much a winter project. We'll be pouring over this. And so just a heads up to block ambassadors that we will be getting in touch with you to confirm that we can share your contact info with a select group of participants close to you. So that is on the way. And I'll also say that this was very much the initial idea around Project Swallowtail. And so this is something that we're committed to and that we want to work on and improve. Stop making it specific to a part of Toronto. It should be for any area that you could connect to community and help with the creation of pollinator gardens. Duly noted. So we did start with the West Toronto project area. That was before we had any real funding, and into the first year of our funding, which was geographically limited, like our funding could only operate within a few certain postal codes. We since then received funding that allows us to go beyond those boundaries, and with the support of the City of Toronto, especially through the Pollinate TO grant recipients, we're really able to invite everyone from across the city. We're not sure yet what that will look like. I think that will mean really working closely with block ambassadors across the city and really equipping them and finding those local champions and funneling resources to them. We'll also have people signed up from actually all over North America. So I'm not sure what that will look like, but I think they read the newsletters. If you're here tonight, thank you for your support. We're really delighted to know that there's this interest. But definitely, I think this idea, this model, anyone can start it anywhere. And we're hoping to share some of our more organizational lessons learned with other environmental groups and organizations over the course of the winter. More social media presence. That came up quite a bit. And so I should have added some details here, but we do have a Facebook group. I understand not everyone's on Facebook, but that's a great place to connect with other people and share ideas, events, and photo. On Instagram, the Pollinator Partnership Canada account does post Project Swallowtail content and material, and we really do invite you to, or all of those of you who are on Instagram, to use the hashtag Project Swallowtail TO, which is what I should have put on the slide, which I forgot to do. But maybe Junaid, you can pop that into the chat, and we'll bring this up again quite a few times over the course of our next communications and webinars. But thank you for all of those of you who want to spread the word through social media. So looking ahead at 2022, some of the activities will be repeats from past year with, and the improvements that we can make having gone through it once. But there's one theme especially that I want to take a moment, and this came up in your feedback to us through the project evaluation, but also something that we already knew, and it was confirmed to us. So representing our communities, inclusivity and diversity. As our project has grown, so have all the different neighborhoods that are are included in our community membership. And we really want to make sure that our communities are represented within Project Swallowtail. And I think that means on our part as the organizers to more proactively reach out to underrepresented groups, BIPOC, LGBTQ, non-English speakers, lower income, people in apartments that have balconies, and to really make that a more explicit and thoughtful component of our project. So this is something we really want to work on and give a lot of thought to over the course of the winter as we move into the next year's programming. And I'd really like to extend an invitation to anyone who's interested, whether a participant, block ambassador, community group, steering committee member, on maybe forming a group of Project Swallowtail members that can really put a lot of thought and dedicated energy to doing this. So if this is something that's interests you, please reach out to us, and we'd love to work with you on increasing the inclusivity and the diversity of Project Swallowtail so that it is representative of the communities that we live and plant in. Oh yeah, and we did, and we have received some positive feedback about this as well. So we want to build on that and definitely make sure that this is something that we're constantly improving on. Oh yeah, so one thing that we didn't ask in the survey when we were asking about different demographic identification was about ability and disability. So thank you very much for that very important reminder. And this has come up actually in discussions about a few gardens, about making these experiences of nature more accessible so that people with different accessibility needs do have access to our gardens and our natural spaces. So upcoming programming. Well, we are going to have seed sitters again in winter 2022. As I mentioned, keep an eye out for the newsletters. If you're a participant, if you signed up for Project Swallowtail, you should be getting the newsletters by email. If you haven't seen them in a while, they are probably in your spam or promotions folder. But keep an eye on those because we will have limited spaces for the seed sitters program. As I mentioned, we're also going to have the Pollinator Steward certification. Again, I'm very excited about that. We're going to connect participants to block ambassadors to increase those community connections as requested. We're also going to have a dedicated block ambassador training this spring. And so this is something that we got in feedback from the block ambassador focus groups, from our conversations with you, and from the survey, is to get a clear idea of what block ambassadors do, what your roles are, and what resources are available to you to do that. So we're going to create that space, create that time to do exactly that. We're going to have a plant sale. Again, it'll be fun. Maybe there'll be music. I'm keeping my fingers crossed we can have music this time. And then, of course, more in-person events and activities. And on that note, I would like to share a bit that that I am going to be taking a step away from the coordinating role for Project Swallowtail, in large part because I've moved to Halifax, so I'm geographically very far away. But that being said, my heart is so close to Project Swallowtail and to Toronto. I'm going to be on the steering committee and helping the steering committee and Junaid out on an ongoing basis. But I'm passing the baton to Junaid Khan, who has already been doing a tremendous amount of work as a Project Swallowtail volunteer coordinator and now full-on coordinator. So thank you, Junaid, and welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you, Kathleen. Every time Kathleen says that she is going away, my heart drops a little. But I know where she lives and have her number. So she'll forever be here in our hearts and in my ear, hopefully. And yeah, I'm really excited to continue working with all of you on this incredible project. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you, Junaid. And I'm so proud of myself for we have time for questions and comments. So Junaid, would you mind facilitating this?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got a few questions and some great love in the chat, which is amazing to see. And I realized that I responded to some questions while just messaging Kathleen instead of everybody else, so I apologize. So I will cover a couple of them right off the bat. I put the link to the Instagram and the hashtag in the chat, so if you want to take a look, just scroll up. Nancy in the chat mentioned that she'd like to see Project Swallowtail partnering with the Toronto District School Board to transform so much of their, dead turf, making use of and growing the interest of gardening and these skills within children is an excellent way to reach diverse communities, and that is a wonderful point. And we do have, 26 schools signed up as part of Project Swallowtail that have largely been through a lot of concerted effort by block ambassadors who are really, who have kids in the school. And through the pandemic, it's really been quite hard to engage with schools who've just been undergoing the stresses of kids and trying to get education going. So we're continuing to work on it. However, on the board level, we don't have that reach yet. So the first question in the Q&As is from Brenda, which it talks a little bit more about the bylaw aspect of Project Swallowtail's work. So Brenda mentions that she's created a boulevard pollinator garden with Pete's help, shout out to Pete, and is worried about what you mentioned, Kathleen, that it could be cut down, which it has been several times in the past, unless the garden is registered with the city. Is there a way of registering the boulevard garden with the city based on her knowledge right now?
That's a great question. I'm not sure what, if any, that process looks like within the city. It may be something somewhat official. It may be just more informal. I think what we could do is, Brenda, if you send us just an email with just very simple details about the location of the garden, that we can connect you to the proper city people so that it's known that this is not just an overgrown, forgotten piece of land, but it's actually a very intentional boulevard. And I will add that, the city has many departments and many staff, and not everyone is always familiar with all the other initiatives going on, even within the city or even within their own department. And so sometimes the supervisor for an area, for a park area, for example, might have some plans around pollinator habitat, but that might not necessarily get communicated to the summer hires who are in charge of mowing. So simple communication mistakes like that, unfortunately, they do happen frequently. One thing that could be helpful would be to have a sign up, and that often just tells people that this is indeed an intentional space, and that can be a Project Swallowtail sign. It can also be a no mow please or no mow sign. This is pollinator habitat, but definitely do send us the details, Brenda, and we'll try to get you in touch with the right people at the city in time for the next growing season.
And we got a follow-up comment in there that Douglas Counter in Etobicoke probably has some information about how to protect such a garden, and absolutely he does. He's been himself and Lorraine Johnson have been part of this fight for quite a long time. So if it gets to, you wanting a lot more specific information on the legalities of it all and how to fight, a potential cut, we can definitely put you in touch with the right people. But yeah, signage can really go a long way to just inspire that little bit of like, oh, I wonder if this is a thing. Because the city as a strategy is trying to be more pollinator friendly. So really, that little bit of a signal can be quite useful. Diane asks, how can we circulate the new Goldenrod information sheet? Diane, great question. Anybody who has signed up to our newsletter will have received it at least twice. The City of Toronto has it published on their website, so it's not just available to Project Swallowtail members, but to everybody. And we've also got printed copies, and come the spring and when we start doing Project Swallowtail events again, we'll be able to give it out as a resource there as well. So Misha asks, is Project Swallowtail just a West End Toronto program? Again, great question. As Kathleen covered, that was sort of the inception of it, but it has very, very comfortably grown far beyond the reaches of just West Toronto. However, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I would just add to that, Junaid, that just through the organic development of steering committee members and participants and block ambassadors, a lot of the human resources are concentrated in West Toronto. And as I mentioned, that's where our initial funding was targeted. So we do want to expand, and we want to have an open door policy. Part of what we need to figure out is what that can look like beyond where we have existing capacity. So definitely all of our online resources are available broadly to everyone, including signing up for Project Swallowtail certification. I think the harder bit to answer that we're going to have to figure out is, what do in-person activities look like in those places where we might not have that many people situated yet. So that's something we want to work on, and that's definitely something we would love to get more input and ideas from our participants that are maybe on the frontiers, the geographic frontiers of Project Swallowtail, because we really do want to support you. We want to give you the tools, and so please do let us know if you're in that vanguard, what you need and how we can support you.
And I'm recognizing that it is 7 p.m. EST and 8 p.m. in Halifax, so I will take this question from Misha as the last one. What is the difference between a certified pollinator steward, so PSC graduate, and a block ambassador? So really, like, what is it that is the role of a block ambassador, and what do they do?
Great question. Thank you, Misha. So there's a lot of overlap, but block ambassadors are a way of participating in Project Swallowtail, and block ambassadors are those members who might be particularly engaged and enthusiastic, who have ideas about things they want to do, and to whom we provide a bit more direct support, including periodic block ambassador meetings. So block ambassadors speak with each other as well as directly to the steering committee on a semi-regular basis. Now, certified pollinator stewards. So that's a program. The Pollinator Stewardship Certification is a program from Pollinator Partnership Canada. So people well beyond Project Swallowtail can become certified pollinator stewards. And so we've offered this program to block ambassadors in Project Swallowtail. And the difference is that block ambassadors are a role within Project Swallowtail, and certified stewards are people from anywhere across Canada who have gone through the training, which includes online courses or in-person courses. We've had both options, and who then create habitat and also do community outreach and engagement, and have those two steps or those two kinds of actions documented and submitted. And so I hope that's clear enough, but happy to answer any follow-up questions on that.
Okay, and we've got a question from Pete. Assuming the BA model can be applied to the other 7 ecozones across southern Canada, do you think this model could expand further afield, given the resounding increases in public engagement and ecological connectivity in West Toronto and wider GTA? So essentially, can we go national?
I think the question is, can this model? So
Yes.
Project Swallowtail, it cannot be a national level initiative because we're a place-based grassroots community project. We're a community. And I think one of our strengths is finding that balance between being large enough that we have a lot of energy and resources and impact, but not so big that we lose that capacity to really know what's happening on the ground and connect with each other and make those grassroots changes, park by park, street by street, garden by garden, school by school. So the model, I think these last 2 years have shown me that this model is very effective. And so definitely, and that's one of the things we'd like to do over the next several months, is share what we've learned as an organization with other environmental groups, so that an environmental group in Vancouver or in Regina or in Halifax can basically start their own Project Swallowtail and call it something else, and basically operate in the same way and have similar success. So I think this model is really impactful and can definitely be shared and hopefully inspire others and be replicated across the country and maybe even beyond.
On that note, I want to thank everybody for being here. And Kathleen, any final comments to close us out in this beautiful year of pandemic, but somehow also this incredible amount of engagement and love and plants shared?
Well, I want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of the steering committee members for showing up with all of their expertise and their knowledge and their time, who each have contributed in their own unique way and really made this project what it is. And I especially want to thank each and every participant, each and every member of our community who has jumped in and decided to plant some plants, meet some new friends, and make our city a more sustainable and connected place. So thank you so much.